Hello, everyone. This is Zach Brooks from World Transplants Athletes. If you have a body with a new part, you are a World Transplant Athlete. You can follow us all over the web at World Transplant Athletes, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and your social media platform of choice. We have a team of 18 organ recipients from 11 countries and 6 languages working behind the scenes to make content for you organ recipients anywhere in the world. Today, we're doing a podcast that we call Friends of World Transplant Athletes to celebrate and support groups anywhere and everywhere that are either leading organ transplant recipient initiatives or have recipients as their primary focus. So today's a huge, really exciting. We have Philip Jones Jr. from the United States on, who's had a kidney transplant. And when I posted a few days ago on Instagram and a few other places, I don't think I've ever gotten more likes from people because Philip has a really amazing show that he's doing called A Second Chance, along with Tafaro Cook, also from the United States. So shout out to Tafaro. The purpose of Second Chance show he's doing getting some feedback here called A Second Chance. Seen that went away, so I'll repeat a few of those things in case anyone watching got some of that feedback that I heard. So Philip is one of the driving forces behind something called A Second Chance. He'll talk about that a little bit more, along with Tafaro Cook, also a recipient, and I'll have Tafaro on another show for something he's doing called, what is this called again? It's
Kidney Care Coaches.
Kidney Care Coaches, really awesome as well. So the purpose of A Second Chance is to spotlight individuals and their story of fighting through difficult life situations, oftentimes either before getting an organ transplant or after. And if anyone's been through any of it, we know that it's difficult before and after. You can check out A Second Chance on Instagram, Facebook, at Second Chance 2021, and you'll find them anywhere. So let's get right to the guest. Philip, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about you, where you're from?
Definitely, Zach, and appreciate the opportunity to speak about A Second Chance. My name is Philip Jones Jr. I live in Los Angeles, California. I had a kidney transplant 2007. Um, the reason behind A Second Chance, and actually a lot of people ask me this question: how did you get to the name A Second Chance? And my original thought process for doing a show was going to be focused on kidney patients or transplant patients in general, and it took me a long time to come up with a name because there's so many other shows and podcasts and things like that with most of the names that would come off the top of your head that you would think about. And so it's again it took me a while, and I say, what are you what is the purpose of this show? What am I trying to do? And then I realized is to say that everybody, no matter what circumstances you face, gets and deserves a second chance at life in any, point, place, of time in your life. Whether it's you was homeless at one point, lost your job, transplant, other life-threatening diseases and things of that nature. So, um, started Second Chance in March of 2021. Originally started it with Austin Lee. Then he left and did some other things on his own. And then I brought in Tafaro Cook. And the thing about Tafaro Cook is that originally it started off as just kind of a partnership between A Second Chance and the Why Not Foundation. And I remember when I asked Edward, I said, "Hey man, you want to do this?" He's like, "Man, I don't like doing those things like that." And I was like, "Oh yeah, man, I respect that for sure, 100%." And so my next choice was very easy, which was Tafaro Cook. And he jumped on as soon as I told you, he was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And I think it was about the third week in that month. And I just, the light bulb click went off for me. I'm like, yeah, no, this I need to keep this dude here as long as I can. And we've been rocking ever since August of last year. This has been a great ride. We've done a number of educational videos, conferences, great interviews with a number of people from all over the place,
Mhm.
UK, United States, a number of different places around the world. And so, I think the interviews that we do are only really as powerful as because I have the assistance of Tafaro Cook.
Yeah, that was a nice shout out. So, Tafaro, if you're watching or watch another time later, you got a lot of props here, and I can't wait to talk to you about your other projects. So, what I really like about the name is that, and your explanation of it, Philip, is that it really speaks to kind of the best of the human condition. That every human, no matter what they're going through, um, can go through something difficult. Maybe they made a mistake or something was thrust upon them. Let's say a life-changing organ transplant. Of course, their families and every else is involved. But this indomitable spirit of humans to come over difficult times. And so I think when I watch your show and what comes across over and over again is that you guys are really celebrating humans coming back from something difficult and then showing that life is worth living and there's a lot of value in fighting through things. So I really appreciate how much the spirit comes through in your shows. So thank you for that. Just as a fan. So you've kind of talked a little bit about how long you've been doing it and so forth. So can you talk about the organization behind it? I mean, you talked a little bit about that already, but do you have like one main message if you have to synthesize it to one thing for a second chance?
That would be kind of hard because there's so many um, places that a second chance come from, right? But the main thing that I will say is that we believe that everybody's story is a resource for somebody else.
Oh.
Because let's say, for instance, I mean, you go through a kidney transplant and somebody else that's just now hearing, hey, you have a kidney failure. You know, the things that we went through, it's a very possibility that it can help them get through whatever it is they're dealing with. The educational point of the educational videos and the conferences is to educate people who aren't in that space yet, just now getting in that space, and people who've already been in that space,
Hmm.
right? And so, and that's really the major thing to this is that we feel like you went through something, which means somebody else down the line is going to go through it as well. So why not just be an assistance and help that person get through it, especially when you're that person that understands that, hey, I didn't have that help when I was coming up. I would have loved somebody to help me.
Hmm.
Why not be that you
Yeah.
know, and help somebody else and get them, further down the line than you were. Because as the kid, I got sick when I was 4 years old with chronic kidney disease, and life for me as a kidney patient, pediatric kidney patient, was a little bit hard for me because I didn't know anybody that
Uh,
dealt with it. Life as a kid in general was great. Went outside, played football, ran track, did all that stuff that that you're supposed to do as a kid. Or some of us get to do as a kid. Some people are just in a worse off situation, and can't participate in those things. Um, but as a kidney patient, man, for a while I said to myself, if I don't get this transplant by the time I turn 18, I ain't gonna make it.
okay.
And I ended up getting that transplant at 17.
Okay.
So like right on my deadline border.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah. Just in
but
time.
definitely grateful for the opportunity that was presented to myself. I've told Edward Drake, who just commented, a number of times that from the time I got my transplant till 2019, I've been trying to get on these boards and communicate with these other organizations and things like that. Nobody gave me that shot until Edward Drake gave me that shot with the White House Foundation, and so I do owe a lot of that credit to him because he showed me the way that I got to a second chance.
Yeah. Well,
So
thanks. Yeah, thanks. Why not? Another shout out to another great group out there.
so but
So
yeah,
I,
I'm going to keep talking. Next question.
yeah, no, this is cool, and I appreciate the listening to you. So one of the things that stood out what you were saying, and I want you to break this down further, you talked about not yet in space, or maybe you're talking about the space that you were in. So the looking future, in the moment, and looking past. And of course, I get what you mean by saying, you're not in that space yet, or you're in that space. But can you talk about that a little bit more? Like maybe from your own experience. I mean, you weren't in the space of having a transplant yet, but you were kind of looking forward to it at one point. You had dialysis and got a transplant, and then you had your transplant and could look back on that experience. But now you're on dialysis again, so you're in a different space, looking forward to a new space. You've talked about space a lot, so can you talk about the transition, sort of psychological, mental, emotional, going from space to space, because it's something that you obviously really appreciate very well, and something you're really trying to share with others and make them feel good about who they are no matter what space they're in. So maybe you can talk a little bit about space, what it means to you, and how you try to go between those places.
So space for me when it comes to the pre-transplant space is for me because that's really all that I've ever known is transplant. Pre and post transplant is all my life has been since the age of 4. And I functioned on 30% kidney function since the age of 4 till I
Mm-hmm.
got to 16, and that was when my kidney function started to decline very rapidly. My doctor called me, he's like, "Hey, it's that time for you to get put on the list. Time to go to dialysis. I'm making a call right now." And for a long time as a kid, I kept questioning why my pediatric nephrologist kept punching me in the face with, you're gonna need a transplant. You're gonna need a transplant. You're gonna need a transplant. And as a kid, you hear stuff over and over again, you're like, man, that's irritating. Like that's really getting on my nerves.
Mm-hmm.
And it was crazy that when I got to that point, it was like a flawless transition for me. And
Mm.
I understood at that point that was why they kept hitting me over the head with it, was to
Okay.
get me ready for that transition from somewhat regular life to dialysis life to possibly transplant life. And so at 16, it was August 2006. Went on peritoneal dialysis. Still went to school. Still played football. Still did all the stuff I was doing on peritoneal dialysis. And in February 2007 was when I got the call from UCLA to have go get my kidney. And um, so after that, 2008 was actually when you and myself met in Pittsburgh
Yeah.
at the transplant games that year. Was and I bring these things up because there's some transplant patients out there that have no idea what the transplant games are, and I would love to see as many transplant patients, living donors, donor families, supporters get to experience the transplant games because it is a emotional situation to be able to see so many people that are in the same space come together and have just a great week of fun. Whether it's you in the sports or you're just rooting for someone, or you just said, I just feel like going on a trip and go sightseeing or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then so it's the space thing is a little awkward because when you go from not really having to not necessarily not having to pay attention to stuff, but you can still live your normal life to transition to dialysis, transitioning to transplant, and then transition back to dialysis, that can do a lot to your mental state of mind. Because when you get that transplant, your mind is set on, I'm had this transplant as long as I can.
Yeah.
That's what the goal is. So I people like George Franklin are idols and mentors of myself because people like that took care of business after transplant. They did what they were supposed to do after that transplant,
Yeah.
and so George is here 47 years post transplant, rocking and doing this thing. He just competed at the transplant games in San Diego.
Yeah.
I hope he's doing better. I talk to him frequently at a incident while he was there, but
Yeah.
um, so and I've been on dialysis now for 12 years, so it's a lot different space at this point because I only had to go through it for 6 months the first time.
Yeah.
You go from 6 months to 12 years, that's a big difference in time,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah,
But
that's a big difference.
oh,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. Thanks for sharing, Philip. So, like, it sounds like to me, and you didn't say this, but if I have to kind of give back to what you said, is you're kind of a guide through these different mental emotional spaces while you're going through something difficult. In this case, happens to be transplant or dialysis and all the spaces in between. But your other kind of message that's coming through is like, no matter what your space is, your life is worth living to its fullest, no matter what. And I think that's kind of what's coming across in your message. So yeah, I guess your doctor that gave you some training for the rest of your life, prepare for the transplant. Now you're kind of preparing others for whatever situation they might find themselves in. So thanks for expanding on the space a little bit. So now a few more questions about your show. So how many shows have you guys done since 2021? You started in March 2021, I think you said.
Yeah, it's been because we've done so many Sunday night shows plus educational videos, and we did 4 conferences in the span of 1 year. Um, Got to be between 140 and 150.
Okay, that's a lot of shows. It's a lot of impact you're putting out there. A lot of ripples you're putting out to the waters of the world and all the molecules and space and time and touching people in a lot of different places. What in all of those shows, if you have to kind of think about one theme that you feel you notice from those shows, what would you say that is? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I want to get your sort of direct, instinctual type of response. Like, what do you think? Gosh, that really this sensation stands out in these 140, 150 shows.
I think it's a combination of the three components of a second chance just together in general. The interview shows that we do on Sunday nights are awesome. I mean, we get a different transplant recipient or just somebody dealing with health issues in general every week. And one thing that the Farrell Cook says is you can line 20 transplant recipients up, but you'll get a different story every time. And
Yeah.
my elaboration of that is we might have all gotten to the same destination, but we all took different streets and avenues to get there.
Hmm.
And but I mean, you hear so many powerful and emotional and dynamic stories on Sundays to the educational videos that we put out that can be at any time. We just did one with Jessica Harlick on food substitutions for the holiday season, you
Oh,
know,
okay.
and so it's things like that that keep me wanting to do what I do. Because well, one thing that me and Tafar understand, we've had this conversation on a number of cases, a number of occasions, is that the content that we put out is great content, and the purpose of putting the content out is for people to see it. Right now, how are they gonna get to it? Who knows? At this point now, YouTube is making it a little bit easier for people to find certain things that they're looking for.
Okay.
I know YouTube just added the handles
Yep.
to it as well, so it's a lot easier to find people because up until those came out, it would took forever for people to find the second chance.
Yeah.
Like they would have to type in the name of the guest and then add second chance, and so now it's a lot easier. It's like one of the first two that pop up when you type in add a second chance show. Um, so that's helping as well. And we're touching a number of different things. We just had an interview with a presidential candidate for 2024, um, and that show I think was great. It was very um, informational on two different sides because you got somebody who's not accustomed to knowing what the space is with transplant patients, talking to two people who know it frontward and backwards.
Hmm.
Who are getting, who are questioning him like, hey man, what would you do with this situation? And then like I said, the conferences are dynamic, man. Those conferences, I don't think we've done a bad one yet, and I we never do a bad one, but
Okay.
Um, just those three components of the show make what a second chance is.
Yeah.
Um,
So if you have to look ahead, let's say to 2023, I mean, what do you think your big goals are for 2023? Because you've done a lot of shows, 140, 150 is a lot, and you've interviewed people more or less related to transplantation and so forth. But you have a lot of other folks you're talking to. So what would you say your goals are coming up for 2023?
I think the goal for 2023 is to make a lot more connections within the transplant space with these other companies and organizations and things of that nature, um, to get more people from different continents and things like that around the world to come on the show as well. Like I said, we've done some, in a couple of them in the UK area that have been on our show. And so I just think that we need to reach a little bit further than what we've been reaching. I think we've done, in my eyes, just enough to kind of get by and be recognized just in general.
Mhm.
But we need to do tons more to reach the people who need to see the content that we put out.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. So with that, I'll let you then share final question is how can people find you?
Uh, like you said, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. We have our own website as well. It's www.a the number two ndchance.net. So it's a second chance.net. Um, and just email me Philip Jones 17 period mark SCTA at gmail.com. If you want to come on the show, tell your story. And it doesn't have to. And the thing about our show is that the reason why it's named a second chance is because, like I said before, everybody deserves a second chance, and it's a number of people have gotten them in a number of different reasons. It doesn't have to just be health issues, or anything like that. If you were homeless at one point and your story is dynamic to the point where it's like, hey, I'd had nothing and now I have something.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that's the transition basis that we look at is, and even if you don't have to be at now I have something, it could be I'm working to get something.
Yeah.
Those stories are some of the most powerful ones when you can see somebody before your eyes working at something that they want to succeed at. And so that's really got the purpose for, like I said, about a second chance. So
Yeah. Thanks so much. So um, I think what the thing that stood out that I'm going to take away is that everyone's story is can be a resource for someone else. So thank you so much. So everyone, thanks for watching an episode of Friends of World Transplant Athletes. If you have a body with a new part, you are a world transplant athlete. Thank you so much, Philip Jones Jr. from A Second Chance. And looking forward to talking to future guys out there doing really cool work in the transplant space, especially if you're a recipient or recipient led, because the stories that we're sharing with the world hopefully going to affect someone who's in the hospital today, looks at their phone and finds out that how there's a guy out there that looks like me. I want to be like him. I want to have a good life. And now that I have had this this organ transplant, I can do some really cool things in this life. So thank you, Philip, for agreeing to spend some time with us today.
thank you for the opportunity. Greatly appreciate you.
You're welcome. Have a good afternoon.
You as well.